Hi, I'm Donna Chang, CEO of Hope Biosciences, here to talk to you today about stem cells. By now, you've probably read a lot about stem cells and probably more confused than ever. So we hope that we can give you some clarity in this field. I've been in the stem cell field myself for over 10 years, studied biology and biotechnology, and have a good grasp on current technologies. And in full disclosure, I do work for a for-profit stem cell research company. However, I hope that we can provide you with accurate information that is up to date and based on scientific fact. So what is a stem cell? Quite simply, a stem cell has to have two properties: the ability to differentiate, or that's a scientific term for the ability to transform into a different kind of cell type, and the ability to regenerate itself, so like make a copy of itself. Probably the most well-known or most talked about stem cell is an embryonic stem cell. Embryonic stem cells come from embryos. When you and I were little embryos forming in our mother's wombs, we were essentially a big ball of stem cells. These incredibly powerful cells went on to become the bones of the body, the muscles, the brain and nerves, your heart and your entire circulatory system, even your skin and hair. All of the cells and tissues that made you originated from these cells. So let's take an example of a 5-year-old riding their bike. They bump into something, fall down, and they somehow have the ability to get right back up and keep going. The further in age we are, this looks very different. We may fall down, and whether we get back up is largely dependent on how old and frail we are, right? So what happened, right? Our bodies have degenerated over time, and it's harder and harder for us to get back up. And so the stem cells in your body are responsible for maintaining and regenerating you. And that's what the stem cells do. They have the ability to regenerate into new cells and regenerate into different cell types and tissues. And they can constantly repair and regenerate your body. So the younger you are, in general, the more you have. Now, there are different factors: environment, age, behavior, a lot of different factors that might affect those kinds of numbers. We don't really have exact numbers of how many cells are running around in your body, but as you age, you certainly lose a lot of these cells. Your body makes up for them a lot of the time, but in general, we lose cells as we age. So let's talk about different kinds of stem cells. There are lots of different kinds of stem cells, and probably the most often we hear about stem cells, we hear them as embryonic stem cells or adult stem cells, fat stem cells, umbilical cord stem cells. There are all kinds of stem cells that we hear about, but they're normally referred to based on their source, meaning where they came from. So embryonic stem cells are in a class of their own because they're a source as well as a type of cell. Anything that's not embryonic is considered an adult stem cell. But talking about the source as describing the stem cell, for example, saying a fat stem cell, is really an inaccurate representation. So let's take gold as an example. Whether you go and dig into the ground to find gold, or whether you go onto a mountain to mine gold, the point is that you're getting gold, right? And there are different types of gold, or metals, let's say, gold and silver and different metals. So, but the source, where you got it from, isn't really the point. Stem cells are the same way. There are different kinds of stem cells that have different functions, right? And so if there are different cells that you want to get or harvest, then you have to think about where to get them from. And there are various places you can get them from. If a stem cell comes from any other source other than an embryo, it's considered to be an adult stem cell. So I'll go over just a couple of the most frequently discussed adult stem cells. There's a lot of different kinds of stem cells out there, but the most popular are hematopoietic stem cells. Hematopoietic stem cells are typically isolated from umbilical cord blood, bone marrow. These cells have the ability to become different blood cells. So red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, that sort of thing. There's another kind of adult stem cell that's gaining a lot of popularity that's called the mesenchymal stem cell. Mesenchymal stem cells are adult stem cells that have the potential to become almost every cell type in the body. MSCs, for short, can become fat, bone, cartilage, muscles, nerves, the tissues that make up your organs, our veins, and our arteries, all cell types. The only thing they can't become is blood. However, MSCs have the ability to become new bone marrow, which can lead to hematopoiesis, which means new hematopoietic or blood-forming stem cells. Therefore, MSCs have a ton of regenerative potential while coming from adult sources such as fat or bone marrow. Mesenchymal stem cells are typically known for their differentiation capacity, or their ability to become almost every cell type in the body, but they also possess a variety of different functions. MSCs can self-regenerate. They are active in stopping cell death. They also have the ability to create new blood vessels. They can even regulate the immune system, and they even show to have antibacterial properties. There are also induced pluripotent cells. That's a very popular stem cell that's being researched nowadays as well. It behaves like an embryonic stem cell because it inherently is, but it doesn't come from an embryo. It actually is also in a class of its own because it starts with an adult stem cell that's converted to behave like an embryonic stem cell. So at the end, iPS cells have the ability to become any cell in any tissue type. So now that we understand what stem cells do, where they come from, the million-dollar question is, well, how can they benefit me, right? How can they benefit our health? You hear about stem cells being used all the time to fix joints and cure blindness and allow people to walk again, and all of these, crazy things that you hear out there makes it seem like, oh, stem cells are a miraculous cure-all for everything. But I think as a whole, stem cells are being widely researched. It is true. They have a ton of potential. And again, the potential is really based on their function, right? Every cell has a different function, and depending on which stem cell you're looking at, has a different function in the body. So you have to target the right kind of stem cell for the right problem. And if you can do that, then yes, there's a ton of potential for the different diseases that it could potentially help. So since you've learned a lot, let's have a pop quiz. If you wanted to treat a condition like osteoarthritis, and osteoarthritis is quite simply a condition where in your joints, in between your joints, you have this nice cushioning called cartilage. And over time you lose it, or you've lost it because of injury. So if you want to rebuild that cartilage, if the goal is to rebuild it, then what kind of stem cell would you need to use? Would you use a hematopoietic stem cell? Probably not. Hematopoietic stem cells become only different kind of blood cells, right? So you'd want a cell that has the potential to become cartilage. Now, whether it does when it gets into your body is a whole different that's different kind of research. But right now we're focused on, if we want to create cartilage, what stem cells should we target? And we really have to start there. You really have to start with thinking about what particular stem cell do I need to be able to do the function that I want it to do. So in the case of cartilage, mesenchymal stem cells are probably the most ideal because they do have the ability to become new cartilage. So that's why a lot of research is taking place using mesenchymal stem cells for tissue type degeneration, hematopoietic stem cells for blood-based disorders. If you hear of cancer patients getting bone marrow transplants, bone marrow transplants have been around for decades, and it's actually a stem cell transplant, because what you're transplanting are the hematopoietic stem cells that are actually in bone marrow. And those go into the cancer patient and start forming new blood cells, which is what they need, right? So that's how stem cell treatments are taking place. And there is, again, a ton of potential. Although there's a ton of potential when it comes to stem cells being used to treat certain diseases, there are a lot of limitations too. And the limitations that we need to consider are finding the appropriate stem cell that you need to fix the problem. And finding enough of them is a challenge. And then being able to have access to repeated treatments until you fix the problem is also necessary. And that we're learning more and more through cell therapy, that